Ancient inventors looked at the universe, contemplated its mysteries, and said, yes, what the world truly needs is a self-kicking machine. And that wasn't even their worst idea. Trust me, the real stupidity hasn't even clocked in yet. 1. Let's begin with my personal favorite disaster, the ancient Greek alarm clock. Yes, the same civilization that gave us philosophy and geometry also created a device that woke people up by dumping water into a pan until it clanged loud enough to startle Zeus. Imagine trusting your REM cycle to a glorified leaky bucket. Nothing says advanced society like inventing the first ever drip torture and calling it time management. The idea was simple. Water drips, makes noise, you wake up, probably angry. This was basically the ancient version of your roommate banging pots at 6 a.m. because they felt productive. But the best part is the ancient philosophers who apparently needed this thing. Men who could calculate the circumference of the Earth but couldn't wake up on time without aquatic harassment. Truly, humanity peaked early. 2. The Romans, being engineering geniuses, once created a device called the death whistle. Not for war, not for hunting, for intimidation. They carved these little skull-shaped whistles that produced a sound so horrifying modern researchers describe it as the noise your soul makes when it receives a parking ticket. Imagine an army marching toward you, and instead of swords, they blow into these demonic kazoo scream hybrids. It wasn't a battle tactic, it was weaponized anxiety. And of course, some Roman somewhere thought, yes, this is the vibe. Let's terrify our enemies with noises that sound like a haunted toddler. Archaeologists say it was meant to mimic spirits. I say it was the first proof our species would rather scare people than develop emotional maturity. 3. You'd think ancient medicine would occasionally get something right. You'd be wrong. Meet the Egyptian flea trap, a tiny cone you filled with honey and placed on your skin. The idea was that fleas would get stuck in the honey instead of biting you. In reality, congratulations, you have become a living churro. Imagine sitting in the desert heat, slathered in sugar like you're prepping yourself for a gladiator bake-off. Supposedly, this worked, which means fleas took one look at the honey and said, sure, why not? This meal smells strangely optimistic. Honestly, the only real achievement here is that thousands of years later, scientists still have to pretend this wasn't just a prank played by one incredibly bored scribe. 4. Somewhere in ancient China, a brilliant mind invented the automatic incense clock. Sounds fancy, right? It kept time by burning strings, beads, or fragrant powder at precise rates. Which sounds peaceful until you remember that ancient homes were made of wood, paper, and the structural integrity of wishful thinking. Using a fire trail to measure time is basically saying, I could use a sundial, but what if my house burned down instead? If the timing was off, congratulations. Either your entire schedule collapsed or your entire home did. It was the perfect technology for people who loved punctuality but hated not living dangerously. 5. In ancient Rome, doctors invented a surgical tool called the spoon of Diocles, designed to remove arrowheads from bodies. Useful, yes, but shaped in such a way that you had to twist it like you were opening a bottle of wine. Except instead of wine, it was internal organs. Romans would literally shove this metal spoon into a wound, scoop around, and call it a good day's work. The real miracle wasn't surgery. The miracle was the patient not sprinting out of the room in sheer terror. This device perfectly encapsulates Roman healthcare. Brutal, painful, and somehow still considered progress. 6. One of the oldest smart devices was the ancient Greek automatic pouring jug, which used air pressure to control water flow. Or in simpler terms, a jug with commitment issues. Pour too slowly and it dribbles. Pour too fast and it explodes into a full waterfall like it's reenacting a plumbing disaster. The Greeks loved showing this thing off as proof of intelligence, which is adorable, because it basically functioned like a toddler trying to pour juice. Scientists praise it as early engineering. Personally, I think it's the first recorded instance of a kitchen gadget behaving like a diva for no reason. 7. Then there's the ancient Roman folding chair, a luxury item, a symbol of power, the throne of the portable furniture world, except it broke constantly. Wealthy officials would bring it everywhere, flaunting it like an ancient Louis Vuitton bag, only for it to collapse under them mid-judgment. Imagine declaring a legal verdict while falling backward like a malfunctioning transformer. Romans treasured it anyway because nothing says authority like owning a chair that actively tries to assassinate you. 8. Let's talk about the Egyptian shadow clock, which tracked time using a stick and some markings. It sounds reliable until you realize it only worked when the sun cooperated. A wildly inconsistent coworker. Cloudy day? No time for you. Nighttime? Don't even ask. Early morning? Sorry, boss, my shadow clock isn't clocking. Imagine building your entire schedule around the hope that the sky remembers to show up. It's the ancient equivalent of relying on dial-up internet. Sometimes it works. Most of the time, you're just praying. 9. The ancient Japanese invented the nightingale floor, wooden planks designed to chirp when stepped on, used in castles for security. It's clever until you realize it also made sneaking to the kitchen for snacks sound like a bird convention. Samurai would patrol hallways that literally squeaked with every step, which must have been great for stealth missions and terrible for anyone with insomnia. It's the world's first home security system powered entirely by passive-aggressive flooring. 10. The ancient Greeks also made the Pythagorean cup, a drinking cup that punishes you for being greedy. Fill it too high and it dumps all the liquid out through a hidden siphon. It's basically the universe saying, "Moderation, loser." Imagine offering wine to guests and watching their faces as their drink suddenly disappears like a budget magic trick. Philosophers loved it because it taught a lesson. I love it because it proves ancient people were already inventing ways to shame each other at parties. 11. Need more proof ancient humans were gremlins with toolkits? Consider the Roman curse tablet stylus, a tiny metal pen used specifically for writing angry hexes. Not poetry, not philosophy, hexes. Entire industries existed just to help people professionally complain to the gods. It's the prehistoric version of subtweeting, except instead of posting online, you buried your rant in the ground and hoped Jupiter cared. Imagine being so petty you invent stationery for vengeance. 12. Medieval Islamic engineers created an automatic hand-washing basin powered by hidden weights. Impressive engineering? Until the mechanism jammed and dumped water onto the floor like a misfiring sprinkler. It was supposed to serve guests gracefully. Instead, it regularly turned banquets into slip-and-slide accidents. Hosts would proudly unveil this advanced device, then immediately apologize as water geysered everywhere like the invention itself was having an emotional breakdown. 13. Ancient Chinese inventors built flying lanterns, hot air balloons powered by fire. Great idea for signaling in wartime. Terrible idea for not setting forests on fire. These things floated around like flaming jellyfish, drifting wherever the wind felt chaotic. It's comforting to know ancient people also stared into the burning sky and thought, wow, beautiful, and definitely unsafe. Humanity really is consistent. 14. The Romans designed the water organ, a massive instrument powered by hydraulics, which sounded majestic when it worked, and like a dying hippo when it didn't. Engineers would pump water, pipes would screech, and everyone would pretend it sounded intentional because no one wanted to insult the emperor's favorite noise machine. It was the ancient equivalent of someone insisting their bagpipes sound soothing. 15. And finally, let's appreciate ancient Mesopotamia's clay nail, a decorative wedge hammered into walls to symbolize wealth. Not functional, not structural, just a fancy rock in the shape of a nail. People collected them, bragged about them, and displayed them like early NFTs. Imagine working all day to afford a beautifully crafted nail that does absolutely nothing except exist. Truly, the ancestors understood prestige better than we do. 16. The ancient Greeks invented something called the hydraulis regulator, basically a water-powered pressure stabilizer that kept their giant pipe organs from exploding, which is hilarious. Because nothing says classical civilization like designing an entire device just to keep your musical instrument from detonating mid-solo. The regulator was a sealed cylinder that balanced water and air pressure, which sounds sophisticated until you realize they built it because their original design was so unstable it behaved like a caffeinated geyser. Imagine attending a concert and spending the whole time wondering whether the next note will be music or a blast of water straight to the face. And engineers acted like this made the device safer, even though it still leaked, sputtered, and occasionally made sounds like a drowning goose. But hey, in a world without Spotify, people apparently accepted moist musical chaos as entertainment. Respect to anyone who sat front row. They were clearly braver than the soldiers. 17. Let's talk about the ancient Chinese earthquake detector, a bronze cylinder topped with decorative dragons that dropped little metal balls when tremors hit. Basically a seismograph that worked through the power of vibes and dramatic flair. Historians praise it as scientific genius, which it was, but the design also looked like a cursed fantasy artifact that might summon a demon if you pressed it wrong. Imagine being an official and suddenly hearing a loud clink as one tiny ball falls into a waiting frog statue. Congratulations, apparently an earthquake happened somewhere. Probably, maybe, who knows. It didn't tell you the direction, only that the earth did something rude and now a dragon wants attention. And yet, this was genuinely advanced tech for its time, meaning the same society that once believed in celestial bureaucracy also invented a device that basically functioned like a moody wind chime for the planet's temper tantrums. 18. The Romans once built the chorobates, a 20-foot wooden leveling table used to ensure aqueducts were perfectly aligned, which was crucial, considering their water system depended entirely on gravity, not magic. Except the chorobates was so enormous, it required multiple men to hold steady, like an IKEA table designed by a drunk god. Engineers would stare intensely at a groove of water on top, trying to see if it stayed straight, while the wind, the sun, and reality itself constantly worked against them. One bad gust and suddenly your city's water supply took a scenic detour straight into a hillside. Architects bragged about its precision, but let's be honest, this was ancient people playing a very complicated game of is it crooked, with infrastructure that could wipe out a town if they blinked. And somehow, miraculously, they made it work, proving once again that Rome succeeded through equal parts genius, desperation, and mild delusion. 19. Ancient India gave us the wheel chart calculator, a set of rotating discs used for astrology, math, and determining whether you should talk to your cousin on a Tuesday. Priests would spin the dials like a cosmic slot machine, then confidently declare the will of the universe based on whatever symbols aligned. It was a spreadsheet powered entirely by faith and wrist strength. Imagine modern accountants whipping out a horoscope wheel instead of Excel. According to the alignment of Jupiter and my incredibly unsteady hand, you owe 14 goats. And the wildest part? People trusted it completely. As long as the discs spun and the priest looked thoughtful, society accepted whatever came out. Crop planning, marriage timing, probably even petty revenge schedules. Honestly, it was ancient humanity's way of giving randomness a fancy hat and calling it science. 20. The Egyptians invented copper needle compasses for mining, not navigation, no. That would have been too useful. Instead, they used them to find underground chambers by sensing magnetic anomalies. Supposedly. In reality, these needles probably pointed wherever they felt dramatic that day. Miners would watch the thin metal rod twitch and say, "Ah yes, this means treasure," when it could just as easily have meant, "Congratulations, you've found a void that will collapse on you." It's amazing anyone survived. But Egyptians loved giving simple tools mystical authority. So a tiny wiggling needle became mining gospel. Honestly, it was the ancient equivalent of using a metal detector powered by optimism and a bad attitude. 21. Ancient Mesopotamians built water clocks shaped like bowls that sank slowly as they filled. The idea was elegant. The execution was, well, damp. You'd place the bowl in water, and as the hours passed, it would gradually submerge like it was giving up on life. People treated this as extremely precise science, even though humidity, temperature, and general chaos ensured the clock was lying at least 30% of the time. And imagine trying to schedule your day around a device that might tell time faster just because the sun hit it weird. It's the only clock in history where someone could say, "Sorry I'm late, my bowl sank early," and everyone nodded like that made sense. 22. The Greeks built mobile automatic theaters, small mechanical stages that reenacted myths using gears, pulleys, and puppets. Essentially, they made the world's first overpriced toy box. These things were engineering masterpieces, but also extraordinarily fragile. One wrong move, and Hercules collapsed like a poorly assembled action figure. Philosophers loved them because they demonstrated the universe's clockwork design. Regular citizens loved them because apparently watching a wooden Odysseus spin in circles was thrilling in 400 BCE. Honestly, these gadgets were ancestors of modern theme park animatronics, except with more splinters and fewer safety standards. It must have been magical, assuming it didn't jam halfway through and force everyone to pretend Artemis meant to freeze like that. 23. Medieval monks invented the book wheel, a giant rotating contraption that let scholars read multiple books at once, basically the first academic multitasking device. It looked like a hamster wheel designed by someone who had read too many prophecies. A monk could spin the wheel and switch texts instantly, which sounds efficient until you picture the thing creaking loudly in a silent library like a wooden jet engine. It took up half the room, required intense focus to operate, and probably caused at least 3 monks to get motion sickness while studying scripture. Still, it allowed them to feel technologically advanced without actually inventing anything that solved real human problems. 24. The Vikings created sunstones, crystals that supposedly revealed the sun's location even in cloudy weather. Modern tests say they worked sometimes, meaning Viking navigation was basically, let's look through this magical rock and hope the sky cooperates. It's incredible these people conquered anything other than their own backyard. Holding up a chunk of calcite and confidently saying, the sun is definitely there, takes either extraordinary courage or extraordinary ignorance, and the Vikings had both in surplus. To be fair, it beat navigating by the mood of the ocean, which might have been Plan B. Number 25. Medieval Europe saw the rise of the wind-powered sawmill. A great idea, except for the small flaw that wind does whatever it wants. Operators would stand around waiting for a breeze like extremely frustrated wizards. Too little wind, nothing happened. Too much wind, and the blade spun like it was auditioning for a horror film. People praise this as an ecological innovation, but it mostly produced long stretches of boredom punctuated by sudden screaming. And despite its unpredictable nature, the sawmill revolutionized woodcutting, proving once again that medieval engineering thrived not through reliability, but through blind faith and adrenaline. 26. Ancient Persia had the yakshal, an enormous ice storage structure that preserved frozen water in desert heat. Brilliant, yes, but also hilariously dramatic. These things were massive beehive-shaped domes that made cities look like they were being attacked by giant clay marshmallows. Persians stored ice inside by directing winter runoff through tunnels, a system so elaborate it feels like ancient HVAC designed by a man who deeply distrusted summer. Imagine walking through the desert, sweating, and seeing a gigantic clay igloo in the distance like the world's slowest air conditioner. Honestly, it's impressive they pulled it off without accidentally inventing a sauna instead. 27. Ancient Greeks built coin-operated holy water dispensers, the world's first vending machines. Insert coin, receive divine hydration. It was practical, but also wildly funny, because it means ancient worshippers lined up to buy holiness like it was a sugary drink. Priests invented it to prevent people from taking more than their share, because apparently even in 100 BCE, humans were overfilling their spiritual cups like cheap buffet plates. It's capitalism meets theology, meets petty temple management, and I cannot stress enough how beautifully absurd that combination is. 28. One forgotten medieval gadget was the fire piston, a tube that ignited tinder through rapid compression. Basically a lighter that required more upper body strength than a boxing match. To make fire, you slammed a rod into the cylinder and prayed it didn't backfire into your face. People loved showing off this miracle of physics. But let's be honest, it was the first tool that said, do you want fire or a concussion? Spin the wheel. Still, it worked, and it made early survivalists feel like wizards with anger management issues. 29. The Romans had a gadget called the tintinnabulum, a decorative wind chime featuring bells and, let's say, enthusiastically designed fertility symbols. These hung outside homes to ward off evil, though they mostly warded off good taste. Picture a bronze sculpture jingling in the breeze, loudly announcing your house as the local headquarters of questionable aesthetics. Romans insisted it brought luck. I insist it brought confusion, embarrassment, and at least 3 awkward conversations with visitors. But hey, if your home decor doubled as supernatural pest control, maybe it was worth it. 30. Ancient China engineered south-pointing chariots, carts that kept a wooden figure consistently pointing south regardless of how the wheels turned. A marvel of gears, yes, but also the world's first attempt to outsource basic direction following to a wooden man who probably judged everyone silently. The contraption used differential gearing, centuries before Europeans invented it, but the accuracy was optimistic. One pothole, and suddenly the figure pointed anywhere from south to existential crisis. Nevertheless, it impressed everyone, proving once again that humans love machines that pretend to know things better than we do. 31. And finally, we reach the ancient Roman hypocaust, an underfloor heating system powered by continuously burning fires. Luxurious, impressive, and an absolute nightmare for anyone who disliked being roasted alive in their own home. Slaves had to keep the fires running, floors got hot enough to cook flatbread, and houses smelled permanently like a barbecue gone wrong. Owners bragged about the comfort while ignoring the fact that their heating system doubled as a slow cooker. But for Rome, this was peak innovation. A warm floor, a smoky house, and the perpetual threat of accidentally inventing the first indoor cremation. Truly, human progress at its finest. And there you have it. Proof humans have always engineered nonsense with confidence. Drop your vote for the dumbest relic, tell me what I missed, and stick around for the next disaster.